Dreams often pull us into strange, symbolic worlds, places where logic is suspended and raw emotion takes center stage. Few dream symbols provoke such intense reactions as snakes, spiders, and insects. These creatures crawl through our subconscious, not just as literal animals, but as potent symbols. According to Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, these images are never meaningless. They are messengers from the unconscious, wrapping powerful instincts, conflicts, and hidden desires in disturbing forms. To begin, we must understand Freud's foundational belief. Dreams are wish fulfillments, but these wishes are often disguised, especially when they conflict with societal norms or personal morality. The mind doesn't present these wishes directly, it uses symbols, and when we dream of creatures like snakes, spiders, or insects, Freud believed the unconscious was using powerful metaphors to communicate internal struggles, anxieties, or repressed desires. Let us begin with the snake, perhaps the most loaded of these symbols. Across cultures and history, the snake appears again and again as a dual figure, both feared and revered. In religious traditions, snakes can be wise or evil, sacred or deadly. In Freudian dream theory, the snake is most often associated with sexuality, particularly male sexuality. Its shape, its motion, and its sudden appearance all contribute to this interpretation. The snake may represent repressed sexual energy, unacknowledged desire, or anxiety around masculinity. Freud encountered countless patients, men and women alike, who dreamt of snakes in intimate or threatening contexts. In some cases, the snake appears coiled, hidden, or ready to strike. In others, it slithers near or even inside the dreamer's body. Freud would ask, "What does the snake remind you of? What associations do you have with it?" And through free association, the connection to desire, shame, or forbidden attraction would often emerge. For example, a woman dreams of being bitten by a snake while walking alone in a forest. Through analysis, it becomes clear that the forest represents her exploration of unknown emotional terrain. The snake bite is not just fear, it's also a confrontation with desire she has long buried. In her waking life, she might deny or suppress her sexuality. But the unconscious does not forget. The snake appears as a challenge to her repression. Sometimes the snake represents not desire itself, but fear of being overwhelmed by desire, of being consumed or changed by it. It can symbolize a conflict between the id, the instinctual, pleasure-seeking part of the psyche, and the superego, the moralizing, judgmental force. The snake, in this sense, might appear as a threat, not because it is evil, but because it represents something the dreamer is trying to avoid feeling. Moving on to spiders, we enter a different emotional landscape. The spider does not strike like the snake. It waits, it weaves, it traps. In Freudian analysis, the spider is often connected to the maternal figure, but not always in a nurturing sense. More often, it represents the devouring mother, an archetype of a woman who smothers, controls, or overwhelms. The web is her tool, and the dreamer may feel caught, unable to escape. For example, someone who dreams of a spider descending over their bed might be experiencing unconscious anxiety about their relationship with their mother, or with another dominant, possibly manipulative female figure. Freud believed that the web itself is symbolic. It represents entanglement in emotional obligations, guilt, or psychological dependency. The spider becomes a stand-in for a powerful presence in the dreamer's life, one that threatens to consume rather than protect. There's also the element of creepiness, the feeling of something alien and silent watching or approaching. The spider in dreams may be tied to unacknowledged fears, fear of betrayal, fear of judgment, or fear of being emotionally consumed. Sometimes it represents the dreamer's own shadow, the parts of themselves they consider dark or unacceptable. In this interpretation, the spider is not the enemy, but a symbol of the disowned self. Now let us explore insects, a category that includes a wide range of creatures: ants, cockroaches, beetles, lice, and flies. These are among the most common and most distressing dream symbols. Freud interpreted insects as symbols of anxiety, disgust, and obsession. They are small, invasive, and hard to get rid of, just like certain persistent thoughts or unresolved feelings. Insect dreams often signal that something is gnawing at the psyche. Perhaps it is guilt, perhaps shame, perhaps a memory that won't go away. The crawling sensation represents emotional unease. A man who dreams of insects under his skin might be expressing deep-seated feelings of being unclean, unworthy, or mentally overwhelmed. In Freud's view, these dreams are somatic metaphors, the body revealing emotional truth. Insects may also represent people or situations in waking life that the dreamer perceives as beneath them or unwelcome, but which they are unable to eliminate. For example, lice in dreams may be linked to feelings of social contamination, someone the dreamer wishes to avoid, or an obligation they find repellent. Yet the unconscious brings it up again and again, insisting that the issue be faced. Another layer of meaning comes from Freud's idea of displacement. In this process, emotional energy is shifted from a threatening subject to a safer one. If a dreamer is unable to consciously confront their resentment toward a family member or partner, that resentment might emerge in the form of a dream infestation. The insects carry the weight of the dreamer's emotional conflict. They are symbols of what the dreamer cannot say out loud. Sometimes, insect dreams have a more obsessive-compulsive quality. The dreamer may see themselves endlessly cleaning, killing bugs, or searching for their source. Freud saw this as a mirror of the inner life, particularly of those struggling with obsessive thoughts, intrusive guilt, or neurotic repetition. The dream doesn't offer resolution. It dramatizes the struggle. We must also consider how these creatures appear together in some dreams. A person may dream of a snake crawling toward a web, or a swarm of insects emerging from a spider's body. These surreal combinations reflect internal complexity, different parts of the psyche in conflict or dialogue. The snake's sexual energy might clash with the spider's maternal control. The insects may represent the byproducts of that conflict, feelings of shame, panic, or disgust that emerge when desire and guilt collide. Freud emphasized that the context of the dream matters deeply. Where is the snake? Is it threatening or passive? Is the spider weaving or attacking? Are the insects multiplying or being eradicated? These details are clues. They reveal whether the dreamer is confronting, avoiding, or being consumed by the unconscious forces symbolized by these animals. It's also vital to look at the emotional tone of the dream. Fear, disgust, fascination, arousal, each of these feelings points toward a different interpretation. A dreamer who watches a snake with awe may be coming to terms with their sexuality. One who flees in terror may still be struggling to accept it. A person who calmly removes spiders from their room might be regaining control over old emotional entanglements. One who wakes up sweating and shaking is likely still trapped in them. Freud's method was always to begin with the image, then dive into the associations it brings. He believed the dreamer already knew the meaning, unconsciously. The analyst's job was to guide them to that realization. And so, with snakes, spiders, and insects, the task is to listen closely to the dreamer's own words. What do they say about these creatures? What memories or feelings surface when they talk about them? Let us not forget that for Freud, the body and the mind are not separate. Dreams are not abstract puzzles. They are reflections of real embodied experience. The physical sensations we feel in dreams, the crawling, the biting, the paralysis, mirror emotional truths. They dramatize our conflicts, our fears, and our desires, and in doing so, they invite us to confront what we have hidden. In Part 2, we will explore how these dream symbols evolve through different stages of life, how cultural background shapes their meaning, and how confronting these symbols can lead to personal growth and emotional freedom. We'll also examine real case studies and dream reports that Freud analyzed, drawing out deeper insights into why these creatures haunt our sleep. Dream symbols such as snakes, spiders, and insects do not exist in a vacuum. Their meanings evolve depending on the stage of life the dreamer is in, their personal experiences, and their cultural context. In Freud's psychoanalytic framework, symbols are not static. They are shaped by personal history and the broader collective imagery we absorb throughout life. Consider childhood. For many, the first fear of a snake or spider comes not from direct experience, but from stories, parents' reactions, or media. These creatures become embedded in the psyche as representations of danger, mystery, or taboo. A child who dreams of insects crawling over their skin may be reacting not just to fear, but to feelings of helplessness or shame, a mirror of how overwhelming emotions feel at a young age. For Freud, these early associations leave imprints that shape later dreams. In adolescence, the dream symbolism often intensifies. This is a period of growing sexual awareness, identity conflicts, and a search for autonomy. Snakes may appear more frequently in dreams during this stage, symbolizing sexual curiosity or confusion. Spiders may represent feelings of entrapment, whether by parental control, social norms, or internal guilt about sexual feelings. Insects might signal emotional contamination, especially when the teenager feels burdened by expectations, secrets, or shame. Freud would pay special attention to how the dreamer speaks about the animals. For example, is the snake beautiful? Or, disgusting? Is the spider large or small? Passive or aggressive? Are the insects invasive or are they manageable? These nuances offer direct insight into the dreamer's inner emotional state. A fascination with the snake might suggest emerging acceptance of repressed desires. A dream of killing spiders might reflect an attempt to cut ties with emotionally controlling influences. A calm interaction with insects might show the beginning of psychological integration, making peace with the uncomfortable parts of oneself. In adulthood, the themes often shift. People begin to dream more about responsibility, control, and repressed longing. A snake might no longer be just a sexual symbol. It might become a metaphor for temptation, midlife crisis, or the fear of losing control. Spiders could now reflect complicated relationships, especially with partners, parents, or even children. Insects might mirror work stress, social pressures, or buried guilt that's never been resolved. One of the core strengths of Freud's method was his use of free association to reach the root of dream meaning. Instead of assigning a fixed definition to each symbol, he would ask the dreamer to speak freely. What comes to mind when you think of this snake? What does this spider remind you of? Through this process, personal and symbolic layers would emerge together. Let's consider some brief examples inspired by Freud's case studies. A young man dreams that he is being chased through a jungle by a giant snake. He is not bitten, but the fear is overwhelming. Through free association, he connects the snake to an older woman he finds attractive, but also frightening. He is engaged to be married, but is secretly having doubts. Freud would interpret this dream as a conflict between desire and duty. The snake represents the libido, the unconscious drive, while the chase represents the dreamer's attempt to avoid facing his own ambivalence. A woman dreams of hundreds of spiders crawling across
the walls of her bedroom.
She tries to kill them, but they keep coming. In therapy, she reveals that she has recently moved back in with her aging, emotionally demanding mother. The spiders represent emotional suffocation. The bedroom, normally a place of rest and privacy, becomes invaded by this maternal presence. Freud would say the dream reveals a regressive dynamic, the return of earlier emotional patterns where the dreamer feels trapped in dependency. Another patient, a middle-aged man, dreams of pulling insects out of his mouth, one after the other. The sensation is horrifying, but he keeps going. When he talks about the dream, he connects it to a recent argument with his wife in which he said things he regrets. The insects, Freud might argue, symbolize words spoken in anger, words that felt poisonous. The act of pulling them out is an attempt to undo the emotional damage. The unconscious stages a symbolic reversal, offering the possibility of psychic relief. Freud also recognized the influence of culture and myth in shaping dream content. In Western traditions, snakes often evoke the biblical story of the Garden of Eden. temptation, shame, the fall from innocence. Spiders may echo the Greek myth of Arachne, punished for her pride. Insects are associated with decay, death, or punishment in many cultures. The unconscious borrows these cultural images, mixing them with personal experience to create the surreal theater of dreams. However, in other cultures, the meanings may shift. In Hindu mythology, the snake is not evil, it is sacred. In Native American traditions, spiders may represent wisdom and patience. In some African cosmologies, insects play roles as messengers or guides. Freud's theory acknowledged that personal association always takes precedence. Even if culture assigns a specific meaning to a creature, what matters most is what the dreamer feels and thinks in relation to it. So what can you do if you find yourself dreaming of these creatures repeatedly? From a Freudian perspective, recurring dreams are signals. The unconscious is knocking, again and again, trying to deliver a message that has not yet been fully heard. Perhaps you are repressing something, a memory, a desire, a fear. Perhaps you are trapped in a dynamic that feels inescapable. Or maybe you are on the cusp of transformation, and the unconscious is dramatizing the struggle. Freud believed that interpreting such dreams was not about finding a single correct meaning, but rather unlocking access to emotional truth. He encouraged dreamers to pay attention not only to the symbol but also to the feeling that accompanied it. The terror of being chased by a snake, the revulsion at seeing insects in your mouth, the paralysis before a spider, all these sensations matter. They are part of the language of the unconscious. In therapy, Freud would guide his patients to trace the chain of associations, starting with the image and moving through memory, emotion, fantasy, and conflict. This process was not just about insight, it was about healing. To see the snake as a symbol of desire rather than doom, to face the spider not as a monster, but as a mirror of dependency. To acknowledge the insects as thoughts you want to kill, but can't. That was the work of psychic transformation. Let us also reflect on what happens when these symbols disappear. A dreamer who once feared snakes may begin to dream of them peacefully coiled nearby. A spider may no longer attack, but instead sit calmly in a corner. The insects may vanish altogether. These changes suggest psychological integration. The parts of the self once repressed or feared have now been accepted. The dream shifts from struggle to resolution. Of course, not all dreams offer closure. Some bring new images, deeper conflicts, fresh layers of emotion. The unconscious is not static. It is alive, always working, always creating. Freud saw this as both a challenge and a gift. In our dreams, we see not just who we are, but who we are becoming. We confront the fears that limit us and the desires that drive us. Ultimately, dreams of snakes, spiders, and insects are invitations, calls to self-awareness. They are not to be dismissed as nightmares or random nonsense. They are carefully constructed messages from the unconscious, revealing what the waking mind often cannot bear to face. Freud taught us to listen, to be curious, to ask, why this creature? Why this feeling? Why now? By doing so, we begin to uncover the hidden architecture of our emotional life. We start to see that the monsters in our dreams are not enemies. They are messengers, symbols of our deepest truths, waiting to be heard. So the next time you wake from a dream of something crawling, slithering, or spinning a web, ask yourself not what it means in general, but what it means to you. What have you been avoiding? What have you been denying? And what is your unconscious trying, in its symbolic, surreal, and often startling language, to tell you? Because, as Freud believed, dreams are not nonsense. They are the royal road to the unconscious. And along that road walk snakes, spiders, and insects, not to harm you, but to guide you deeper into your own mind.